are listening to a High Standard production.
All right, man. Welcome back to the Geek Set Podcast, the only podcast that blend hip-hop culture and geek culture together. I'm your boy Deuces in the building, and today I got royalty in the building with me. I got somebody that is just so important to the culture, so important to a lot of people growing up. I'm speaking with the amazingly talented Rachel True. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, and thank you so much for having me on, because if there's one thing I am, it's a geek.
Yeah, and see, and you know what? There's so different aspects of geek, and so one of the things that we did is we try to change the narrative of geek, because a lot of people think like geek is just like, you know, this person who's always awkward or who wears glasses, and what our definition of geek is just somebody who is fully in tune into a specific topic, right? So like if you watch like ESPN and you see like Skip and Shannon or Stephen A. Smith, when they're talking about sports, they're technically sports geeks, because they can go into a pocket that's deeper than the average viewer can get into. And we call that a geek. So that's what we're changing.
Yep, that's why I claimed the word, actually, because I'm a bibliophile, I'm an artist, and I feel like I can geek out about almost any form of art there is.
And that's what it is it's just something that you love. And so, you know, when we started this podcast, I just remember like talking with my homies, and I'm just like, much respect to all the other geek properties, but I didn't see a lot of people that look like me or a lot of people that sounded like me in high places talking about comic books and anime and video games. And so I was like, but we talk about it all the time. So I was like, I want to put this platform together, and it's been very good.
That's why I think it's a great idea, because, you know, again, you're obviously younger than me. And when I was coming up, it was like there was so much stamped on us that to be black meant this, not that, but this. And honestly, like, I was a Northern girl, right? So half the stuff they were talking about was Southern colloquialisms that I didn't know about, because my kin is Northern. you know, actually my stepmother's people are from North Carolina, but for the most part, a lot of this stuff was outside my experience, but I knew that I was a black person.
Right.
I mean, I usually just say black. Sometimes I say mixed black Jewish chick, because I like to include that other side of part of me, part of my identity. But yeah, most of the stuff I'm into, I suppose, would be outside the norm. But what I love is all these years later, we're beginning to break down those stereotypes. And we understand that people are people. Yeah. Period. No matter what the patois of their voice, you know, because let's face it, if I wasn't this kind of awkward, you know, weirdo who'd booked a lot of manic pixie black girl magic roles when I was younger, I wouldn't have played Mona. I wouldn't have been cast as Mona, you know? Okay. And I think, and I'm talking about that because Half and Half is now on Netflix, part of their Strong Black Lead campaign. And it's actually great that they're bringing those old sitcoms back and putting them on, so a whole new generation of people can see and relate to them. And when I was doing Half and Half, so very many geeky people reached out to me because they saw Mona as an alternate chick.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's one of the things that I love about just your career. Everything that I seen you in is like, you were just unapologetically you. And I know that even as an actor, like you have to do certain roles and embody certain roles, but like, I never felt like you were losing your essence. So, you know, when I was seeing you, I'm just like, oh man, I loved everything that you were in, because it was like, when, you know, you got the curly hair, you always have your own little style, who you are, and I'm just like, I just loved your characters.
Well, it was important to me, especially when I was younger, to wear my natural hair. Yeah. I had to, when I was a kid, wear my hair in 2 braids down the side. And also I was so bummed when I was a kid because it didn't go up like an afro. Right. You know, it just kind of went down. But I wore my hair in 2 braids, and once in a blue moon, I'd get to let it out and be free. And I really loved it. And so when I started working a lot in the early 90s, I just looked around and most people were wearing straight hair. And I get that. Listen, we as Black women, there's a lot of layers to that.
Yeah.
And I will say I understood why most people in conservative or non-artsy careers straighten their hair, because they couldn't get hired.
Right.
If they did it. It is mind-blowing to me that, like, even today, if I were to audition for a senator, they would say, straighten your hair. And I'm like, but this is how it grows out of my head. It can't be wrong if it grows out of my head like this.
Right.
You know? So part of why I chose to wear my hair like that in every role was I wanted Black women to see. And granted, this is like a women... You know what the women tell me lately? That I can't participate in the natural hair debates because my curl is too loose. And I was like, I'm sorry, do you not know who I am?
Right.
The only people, no, Radon Chong, some other people did too, but not so many wore their natural hair because, we have been conditioned to think we are prettier too. It's not just that we need to get the jobs. It's that we as women have bought into a little of we are prettier with straight hair. Or I've had men say, you're real pretty if you just straighten your hair. And I'm like, I want to date you anyway.
Right.
So it's a sticky wicket that I'm not trying to get into, but I am proud I wore my curly hair just so people could see their own reflection, like that line in Blackula. I don't know if you've seen the horror noir documentary I'm in. It is top notch.
Okay.
It is educational and entertaining. And I believe it's on Amazon Prime now, but we talk about the movie Blackula, among many other movies. And Blackula, in one scene, turns his friend, his guy friend, into a vampire, and the guy is looking in a mirror, and he literally, he can't see him, and he says, what is a man if he cannot see his own reflection? Because vampires don't have a reflection. Right. And that's an analogy when you think about it for Black people in America. What is a person if you cannot turn on the TV or open a magazine and see your reflection somewhere? And granted, I'm not everyone's reflection, right? But I am a little bit of a cross section of some people's. And now we've come so much further, with the renaissance of Black Hollywood, et cetera, et cetera. That has really helped. And there's lots of girls with curly hair now. And it makes me super happy.
Well, I think that also with the breaking of barriers, because representation does matter. So like for the longest, like even in horror movies or just in general, like we wasn't in those, right? But then you have things like Lovecraft Country where it's off.
Right. Well, we were in them, but they were separate.
Yes.
And let's remember it. There were Black horror movies, that's what they were.
Yeah.
Black horror movies, as opposed to now a horror movie, even like Get Out, is just a horror movie, even though it stars Black people, right? So that's why I think some of my white actor counterparts, to be 100% honest, maybe even some in the movie The Craft, don't understand why that movie is important as far as Rochelle and Black people. Yes. And it's not about Rachel True at all. It's actually about, that's one of the earlier movies where a Black character was main and front and center and on the poster. Hadn't really happened too many times before. And it's also why I mouth off about billing sometimes. If you're going to put a picture up of the 4 women and then skip over me and go down to someone 8th on the call sheet, what that does is tells young Black viewers, that person isn't important. She's just the Black chick. Right. And I'm not. I'm Rachel True.
Right.
So I don't expect a reporter. I always say this. I don't expect a reporter to know my name at all. But I do expect them to do their research if they're going to do an article and put the poster up with 4 girls. Right. That's my bottom line on that, because when I was coming up as a kid, they didn't make Black celebrities because we didn't know their names, because they weren't on the award shows. All the same stuff I went through, by the way, that I mouthed off about online. I didn't think anyone read my tweets is the deal, by the way. But I'm glad I mouthed off because it's going to benefit other people. It's not just for me and my ego's sake. It is simply for the young actors coming up who are being treated the same way and maybe left out. And hopefully that doesn't happen as much today. Like they would never do that today. They would never have a publicity junket for a movie like The Craft and then exclude the Black chick. It would be uncool today. And yet it's what I lived through. And I'm a Gen X age person. I'm not even our grandma's age or whoever who've been through much worse. So I sort of think about it this way. Like I was the one Black chick in a lot of white movies When I was young, not as enviable a position as it sounds like. I mean, on one hand, I was in stuff that people saw, which was kind of cool. But on another hand, I was a very isolationist life.
Right. But you know what's also funny? So I do a lot of these interviews that I've been doing so far, and I've had a lot of dope people, but I've gotten the biggest response from Black women when I announced that I was interviewing you. So many women hit me up and was like, "Oh my God, I love her. She was in this, she was in that, and it changed my life." Or I was in
a lot of weird Sundance movies, and just like I said, alternative roles that let the boho chick or the geek chick or the awkward girl, like Mona, let these girls, women and men too, frankly, right? But just people understand that it's okay to be a little different. I know when I was growing up, it was interesting for me. A lot of Black people were like, mixing is bad. And I get that, right? Like on one hand, you're like, Black is beautiful, stick with your own, but I was mixed, right? So I'm sitting there as a kid going, am I bad?
Right.
So our verbiage about things matters. How we speak about things matters. Now, the point is, that was a reflection. When people said Black is mixed is bad, that was a reflection to the fact that most of the Black people who are on television or in movies were either very light-skinned or mixed. And that's the truth. You know what I mean? This video shoots me a little lighter than I am. I can't really fix it, or it just darkens it. But kind of a medium to light brown skin person, and even me being, with the curly hair and the light, was more acceptable in the 90s. I'm well aware of why I worked then, right? But I do love to see that we're all progressing, and we understand you could be this, you could be that, you could be a beautiful. I mean, I went out of my way to, like, I'm going to segue into my book for a second, because I wrote a whole book. I still want to talk about Mona and stuff, but I'm sitting here looking at this card, like it's a tarot book, and I say this to say, I know a lot of Black women and people are scared of tarot, but let me ask you a question. You read your horoscope, don't you? In your community, there's that one lady who throws the bones, or go to Mrs. So-and-so, she'll tell you about yourself, right? Or the preacher who's divining and talking to snakes and stuff. So I'm not even about that. What I'm talking about with tarot is using it in a psychology way for self-reflection. Right. As Carl Jung, the psychologist, said, the best way to predict the future is to understand how the present evolved from the past. So a lot of us Black people don't really go to therapy. Some do, but not as many as we could. And tarot cards are just a way to therapize yourself. Is my whole take with the book. And I would love to reach Black and brown women with this message, because it's just kind of a way to calm yourself down. It's a way that I stayed calm. I mean, I was in, like, for a lot of my life, it was high pressure situations where the tension and the anxiety levels were through the roof. And this is one thing that's that helped me. And that's why I bothered to write a book about it, because I wrote it myself. It was really hard to write a book, sir.
Well, that's one thing. When I was doing the research about you jumping into that book and going in, I love the fact that you said that one of your drives was to change the narrative of tarot reading, because a lot of people do have those old, and it is something that we're taught at a young age, but that, like, oh, this is witchcraft, this is the devil, and it's not necessarily that.
It's not at all. In fact, these are simply paper cards. There's no magic in the paper. The magic, hear me out, is in the psychology behind it. Because what you see in this image is going to be completely different than what I see.
Right.
That's the magic, your visceral reaction. And then when you start to do tarot spreads, it gives you advice for how to get to the life you want. Because the other thing is, like, when you're an actor, let's get this for a second. When you're an actor, there's so much smoke and mirrors. Like, if you believe your own hype, you are doomed. You are doomed to your ego taking over. Right. And I just think tarot is a way, in tandem with therapy, for me to stay sane. Because, for example, we've all been this person, and we all know this person who calls you up and dumps everything on you, right? I've been that person. I've been on the receiving end. What I love tarot for is to do the tarot reading first, calm myself down, figure out what I'm really upset about. Right. Then call my friends so I can have an educated conversation with them. Because ultimately, if I were to call you up, you have the minutia of your own brain going on in your head. You have a million of your own thoughts going on. So it's a little bit egotastic to expect you to drop everything and give me all your attention for 2 hours, because I, as a human being, use tarot to learn to self-soothe. And it's not out of alignment with Christ consciousness in any way or shape. I'm not going to name this person, but a super famous friend of mine who's, spiritual, religious. She said she got the book and she's like, I didn't know if I should touch it for a minute because the devil. And then she said, but I realize I've known you a long time, Rachel, and you're really great. And your energy is upbeat and uplifting, and you don't talk shit about, you're a happy person. So for the most part, not always. But she said, she opened it because she thought about it. And she said what I said earlier, which is she reads her horoscope. She's been to some churches where, woo, boy, so she kind of thought about it, and then she really enjoyed it, And again, I want to say to people who love the Bible, like on some of these cards, they're like the Tower card, for example, is the Tower of Babel. I've asked people who go to church all the time, do they know what the Tower of Babel is? And you know what they say? No. I do. I don't go to church all the time, but I've read the Bible. And the Tower of Babel is man's hubris, in man's ego, said, I want to go up and talk to God whenever I feel like it. That's hubris, that's ego. And God was like, you know what? No, thank you, man. And he destroyed the Tower of Babel and caused them to all speak different languages. Thus the word Babel. That's where Babel comes from. So the Tower card in a tarot deck is about building your foundation on a faulty premise, or an unstable foundation. So when you get that card, it might mean something is crumpling, but mostly because you built it in a crap way. Right. Or you built it for the wrong reasons, or you wanted that. How many of us have wanted a person, place, or thing that isn't good for us?
Yeah.
I have.
That's
my entire dating life. No, it's not. I've dated some great guys, but I'm saying I've also been attracted to some guys who are just not good for me. So listen, I call, and then we'll wrap up about the book, but I call tarot on the back of the box, I call it a shrink in a box and a spiritual Xanax, because it's something that we can use along with, going to church or therapy or whatever it is to kind of help know ourselves better. And when we know ourselves better, can't we hear God's message clearer?
Right.
That's all I know is it's good for stripping away that voice that says you can't do it. You're not good enough. Right. And then I also, what might be of more interest to people too, is in the book, I have 22 autobiographical memoir essays. And, again, I had to kind of fillet myself open, because ultimately this is a self-help book. And if I'd only said, and then I danced all night with a big A-level celebrity and everything, and we got on a private jet and I had a diamond, you're not going to learn that. Right. You just know I have a fabulous life, which I do. But that doesn't help you understand the energy of how to shift yourself into a high vibe or attain your goals. So I talk about some tough times. Like a lot of people say to me, what happened? We don't see you after half and half, or where'd you go? And here's the deal. I got really sick. I had a major illness. I kind of talk about it in the book. I won't get into it now. It's a very common Black woman thing. And it really sidelined me for a second, and I had to heal. And I actually think I look better now than I did back then when I look at half and half, because I was sick then and I didn't know it, So I was always, anyway. You'll read about it in the book, but
definitely read about it in the book. I'll make sure it's at the bottom. Make sure everybody sees it. Make sure.
Good. Oh, wait, because I do think even if some people aren't into tarot, I get asked so many nosy DM questions that maybe the book will satisfy. Like I talk about my love life a little bit, and I talk about different things, and I was very vulnerable, because I thought, if you're gonna bother to write a book, you need to be able to access those sides of yourself. So I do hope people check it out. But yeah, I think if I can say anything, if there's women or men watching who are freaked out too about growing up or aging, it's not that bad. Honestly, if you take care of yourself, which does mean at a certain point, you do have to think about 3 things that you do that are terrible for you and maybe give some of them up. Like I used to smoke cigarettes. It's a disgusting habit, right? I probably drove away some amazing men because I smoked cigarettes. But I really worked with my attachment to it and quit because I was like listening to my female friends talk about their wrinkles and their this. And I was like, y'all can't complain about wrinkles if you're smoking cigarettes. You know, like you have to start putting together cause and effect. And that seems to work for me as far as staying sane ish and just staying, you know, being able to be okay despite life's ups and downs.
Right, right. Before we get off your tarot book, because I did wanted to ask a question based off of what I got within the research. You got into tarot because your TV broke as a kid, and then you had these cards. But what actually got you into it?
Sort of, not really. That's like a combination of two things. I actually got into it as a little kid.
Okay.
A little kid, I was in foster care, which nobody ever thinks, by the way. They always think I'm like to the manor born, and I'm like, everyone has a story, right? Each and every one of us has a deep story you don't know about. So I was in foster care from 9 months to 4, and then I went to live with my dad and my stepmom who raised me. And in their bookcase were Carl Jung's book, Man and His Symbols, and Nietzsche's book, Beyond Good and Evil. So those are the two books I was curious about, and I could read. She taught us to read very young, but I obviously wasn't comprehending it. I was probably more looking at the picture. So cut to a few years later, a friend of my parents gave me a deck, and I went, wait a second, this reminds me of those books and the symbols. If you look at Carl Jung's Man and His Symbols, or you know, The Hero's Journey, where they break down movies through that, all of that is just everything a human being goes through. So that's why I got into tarot. I realized it was a language I could probably learn to speak, which I did study it. But the TV broke story is actually later. I'd already, you know, had my decks doing my thing, and I'd moved to LA, worked a bit, and then it kind of slowed down. And my TV broke, and I was like, I was bummed, you know what I mean? Because like TV, and I only had 3 channels, by the way, but still. And then I thought, no, you're not supposed to fix this. You're supposed to do something else with your time right now. And so I really delved into keeping copious notebooks of tarot spreads, readings, cards, things like that. And then about 9 months later, no exaggeration, 9 months later, these 2 guys come over and they're like, it's just a wire. And they fixed the TV. And then the craft script showed up. A friend of mine told me about there's this script, a witch's thing, and told me about it. And so it was very, you know, serendipitous.
Nice.
The timing of it all. So that's, you know, that's my story with tarot. It really has been a part of my life. I actually didn't really talk about it much before because I didn't want to be ostracized by my fellow Black people. But at the same time, I've kind of realized by the age I'm at now, like, I am a weirdo. It's okay. I've always been weird. And now that I'm at this point in my life, it's about embracing myself and my eccentricities and weirdness, but always growing. I like tarot's good for looking at your shadow side, meaning we all know those sides of ourselves we're not that proud of, right? Yeah. It's so good to look at them on your own, by yourself, mask off. By mask, I mean that mask we all wear out in the world. So I think having a balance of being an actor, portraying characters all the time and auditioning and having a little sense of myself from this practice. And again, I say it works really well in tandem with church or therapy or other things that point you in the right direction. Like it really helped me after I got sick and had to have a surgery, you know, which I talk about in the book, after Happy Half. And I also had, you know, gained a lot of weight, and oh my God, somebody took pictures of me. I was already fat, and someone took pictures on the internet and made me 3 times as fat. And I was like, I'm already big. Why do you need to do that? But so it was a tough time, and I couldn't really work because I was sick and my weight, and just having a relationship with a higher self or God, and then also the cards to kind of calm me down was really instrumental and helped, because I knew it was going to take a while to get back to this, to health, even after it. So I credit tarot with kind of keeping my spirits up, you know, just letting me know, like, it's just keep going, you know? And then it was frustrating because I've made a lot of people in Hollywood a lot of money, you know, with working agents and stuff. And when I was ready to work again, my whole team was like, no, thanks. Yeah, and I was like, I put your kid through private school. So again, I use tarot in different mental things. I know to not get bitter about that, because I know other actors are super bitter when things don't go right. And my thing is like, all right, it didn't go the way I wanted, or they're not reacting the way I want. Well, what else can I do? And I thought I was going to write a script about tarot readers. You know, I was doing research and covert research on all that. But then I was approached by a couple of lit agents, and I was like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to write a book. I love books. I used to get lost in books. If you're in a weird place in your life, let me just tell you something. There's nothing like a book, because it transports you away from where you are to somewhere else, and you're learning. You can also listen to audiobooks and things like that if you're super busy or can't read, have trouble reading. So being an author was actually a super big goal of mine. It really was. So that's why I'm super delighted. And I'm like, no, it's not just a deck. It's a whole book.
Right, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, like it's more work than you think to write a book, people.
No, you know what? There was a one point in time I was like, oh man, I want to plan out and do like an autobiography of my life and everything. And it's way harder than you think. Like I was like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get my thoughts out. So I used to like drive and just like talk about my life on my iPhone and everything. But then when I got down to, I was like, all right, so how do I section this out? And it was just like, man, this is way harder than I expected. Like,
also, I think I thought in the beginning, because people are complimenting me for the conversational tone of my book, and I thought in the beginning that I could just write the way I speak, right? And it would work. It doesn't. There's a difference between writing conversationally and speaking. It's two different things. So I really, I thought I was going to be done with this book in 6 months. It took a year and a half.
Makes sense.
But the thing I want to say, a lot of people hit up my DMs, like, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. And so part of what I want to encourage all the geeks and people out there to do is do it. Don't wait for someone to give you permission, and you don't have to go around telling everyone you're going to. Just do it, like Nike says. Seriously, though, because you have to just start. Because when we talk about it, all of a sudden it becomes this huge thing that's almost impossible to do, because we've set it up as this great big thing we're gonna do someday, as opposed to what we are doing. And again, I when I was writing the book, I read that real authors write from 8 a.m. in the morning till 10 a.m. and I'm not a morning person at all. So it's okay to do it your own way. I wrote this book from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. at night mostly. And the other thing I suggest to people, if you already have written a book, right, have someone look at it. I went through the editing process. It's an important part, whether you're editing a movie, right, or a book or a podcast or whatever it is. Editing is part of the process, and you can't be bummed that it's not perfect as is. No, another eye to just move some sentences around or cut things or tighten things up. Just another eye on your book is super great. I know as a first-time author, I benefited from that. For example, I realized quite often my third paragraph is my first paragraph. And my first paragraph became my fourth paragraph, something like that. Right. Just moving, because you're used to how it flows in your brain and you think that's it. And it's great to get some outside influence. It's also really nice. I've gotten some tremendous feedback on people who really like my writing, and that makes me super proud too, because I my goal would be to also write scripts and a fiction book. Yeah. And direct. That's the next thing. I'm like talking about the book, and in my mind, I'm already onto a movie I want to direct. Because that's like, you're an artist too. You understand how an artist's mind works. Like, it's always about the art we're creating, whether it's a book or whether I'm acting in a role, or I sewed a jacket the other day. That's art too, creating something. So I just kind of look at my whole life as art.
Yeah. Hey, I want to talk to you today about GeekSaidPodcast.com. The only place that blends hip-hop culture and geek culture together in one place. And the only place to get your official Geek Set swag. Go to our shop and view our wide selection that we offer. From the No Dubs collection, Big Bit Tees, Talking That Geek-ish, and more. Today, use code Deuces during checkout to get 10% off your next purchase. Then, take a picture and post it on Instagram using the hashtag GeekSet for a chance to be featured on our page. And a chance to win extra deals in the future. So don't hesitate. Drop by the website today. Listen to our latest episode, watch our latest videos, read our latest reviews, and shop with your favorite geeks. GeekSaidPodcast.com. What you just said is kind of what the approach that we took with this podcast, because we are in our third year inception of this podcast. And for the longest, I was like, I want to do these interviews. And I never did them. So then when COVID hit and everybody was forced to stay home, I was like, how do we stay putting out good content? And I said, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to people. And
right now's the time to develop and shift into another gear, because that's the thing, we're always evolving. There's a book I really loved in college called 1,000 Plateaus. It's by these French philosophers Deleuze and Guattari. It's a very dense book, but the concept is we're always becoming something else, right? I mean, the moment you attain that, you're already on to becoming something else, and there's 1,000 plateaus. So when you hit a plateau like you hit, which is, oh, we're doing this, and but COVID's hit, we're on this plateau. How do we up the game, right? How do we reach the next plateau? And then it was circumstances that forced you to go, wait a second, I can do those interviews.
Yeah.
And it's usually stuff like that, people. It's usually circumstances force us. It's rarely like, I'm just going to do it on my own, like, because we're humans. But I think the concept of that is great, and that we're always evolving, and you may decide to add in a different segment a year from now, you know, something else that works for you. And that's kind of how I see my life. Like, I'm always evolving or devolving at times too, because for people listening, I never want to promote toxic positivity, you know, or just be happy. No, it's like my one problem with The Secret 07, and I'm not disparaging our fabulous Oprah at all, but I am saying The Secret 07, I call it The Secret 07 for some reason, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That book. It was this huge book in 07 that was like what it was a mashup of Eastern cultures, very presented in a very easy to digest way for Westerners. And the concepts are great. It's just that they left out the active part of things, at least in my humble opinion. Like, all those people involved in that book were amazing. And I know they know what I'm talking about. Because, for example, there's a part in the book where it's like little Timmy wants a bike. So little Timmy just thinks about a bike all the time and makes a collage of a bike, and then a bike shows up. And all I know is little Timmy must have been white, because in my world, no, I'm not kidding. In my world, I would have had to think about it, collage it, but also get a part-time job to chip in for that bike, to be honest, you know, or do more chores or something.
You got to do something if you want something. That's what my dad taught me.
But that's what I meant. Again, I'm not trying to disparage that great Secret 07. I just think I'd love to see it modernized, to be honest. Because right after the Secret 07 was the big recession of 08. And people realized you couldn't just wish that mortgage payment paid. That's the truth. So I try to, at least in my book and in my life, talk about an active way we can change it. Because the other thing is, like, this is going to make me sound like the old Gen Xer I am. Right, because every generation has its thing, but I've noticed that some younger people really lean into, and I think I am speaking more Caucasians, honestly, than Black people, but really lean into, this terrible thing happened to me, and now it is my identity. I am a victim in this terrible thing. And I get that. We've all been victims. I talk in my essays about different times I was truly victimized, and talk about some really big celebrations. But my thing is, okay, yeah, this horrible thing happened. It was so unfair. It was racist. It was terrible. It was awful, whatever it was. Now, what can I do I can't change them maybe, but what can I do with myself to get myself out of this sad place I'm in? Because no one's going to do it for me is basically the deal. You know, I have to lift myself out. And so and I'm not trying to harsh on younger generations at all. Like, my generation was called slackers and terrible, and all I ever heard in school was, you're the worst class we ever had, every year. That's what I heard every year. Which, by the way, I know teachers should stop saying that. Maybe you're the worst teacher we ever had. How about that? Because I think it sits in your psyche that you are the worst, you know, thing ever. And I don't believe that. You know, I just sort of believe, even if you're in the worst situation ever right now, you're in a rock and a hard place, and we've all been there, there is a little glimmer of light, right? And it's about finding that and going after what you want, because we're Black in America. We know it's unfair. What I said to a lot of my white millennial friends was, because they were like, the pandemic, it's so unfair, it's killing me. And then I said, well, who promised you a rose garden?
Right.
Like, I'm black. Everyone, I knew that life was going to be weird and difficult. I didn't know we'd be locked in our houses for a year, though. Like, no.
Nobody saw that coming.
But I have been kind of conditioned to go roll with it, and then what can I do? Like, even in The Craft, when I was cast in that movie, and originally it was a white character who was bulimic, right? And then I was cast, and they made her the victim of racism. And I remember thinking, this is my young brain, not me now, but I remember thinking, oh, okay, yeah, people are racist to her. What's my actual problem? Like, of course they're racist to her, but she's burned, she's crazy. I must have something else, because being treated like shit because of our skin color was so ingrained that I just had to brush it off. That's my generation, I'm saying. Now, as an adult, though, I'm really glad, because I wasn't sure about the racism storyline when I was young, because I thought to myself, do these producers or do America see my blackness as a problem? Because everyone else is, she's burned, she's crazy, she's suicidal. Right. Are they equating my blackness with those things? And I realized, like, no, they weren't. It's the racists, right? But it's just a tricky thing, because now I see that there was a lot of relevance to that storyline, especially. I wish she had parents, by the way. Everyone else had parents. She didn't. But when you think about the Cosby Show coming into the early 90s, and not himself, right, but just that they never discussed racism, right? Because we went through a stage as Black people where it was roots in the 70s, and it was all slave stuff, and which is, I think, very important to remember, but we got a little it is, actually. We got a little burnout on that, and then it was Cosby Show, right, as the difference, the juxtaposition of slavery and Kunta Kinte was, here's a successful doctor, But, The Craft is one of the first movies I know that actually had a mixed cast dealing with it. I think it's weird, though, that the other girls never acknowledge that I'm... No one ever says, like, she's terrible for calling you the N-word, Like, it's like the other girls are oblivious to what I'm going through in that movie.
That's also kind of symbolic to a lot of things, where people, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, wait, how did you not see this? Like,
but like, even with the cast back in the day, I know what they thought was, she's not being included in the publicity stuff because she's not as famous as us. It's like they're so protected, I think, a little bit in life, that I see why they thought that. But then when I try to explain it to them, and I'm told, you talk about race a lot, I'm like, fuck you all. Right. I don't have to explain myself to any of you. You need to educate yourself. Go knit another pink pussy hat while you're at it. That's literally how I feel. Like, it's time for me to stop hopping around and explaining why you should see my point. Why don't you just educate yourselves? And I wrote these essays in the book before this year, right? So before George Floyd, before the marches and the subsequent protests, and some of the other stuff that happened. But I think the stories are pretty relevant, because obviously not that much has changed.
And what's funny is, I'm also an artist, and I did an album in 2016 called My Unapologetic Black Thoughts. And it was a combination of music and spoken word. And it was due to some certain things that were happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from. And it's funny because people are rediscovering that album and playing it now and telling me, I'm just like, it's funny because nothing changed within 3 years. Like that, I did that album. You would think it would be a period piece, but it's either we're still in that period or nothing changed, because a lot of what I'm talking about in that album still mirrors today, because I'm talking from a Black man's perspective of hope, of frustration, of anger, of tiredness, so it's just like that. Is when you listen to the album, it does have, like, it has those aspects of fuck the police, but then it also has those aspects of, but we need to do better. Let's get together. But it also has that aspect of, as Black men, we need to make sure that we're protecting Black women, and how Black love needs to be a thing, and it's
and vice versa, by the way, because again, being a Gen Xer, like, I'm old enough to remember the hip hop and rap videos of the 90s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not knocking them all, right? It was a crazy time. Times were different, right? But it was very misogynistic.
Yes,
you can't deny that about the videos, some of the videos.
Yeah.
So that's why I love seeing all these women rappers now who are empowering themselves, right? Or someone like MC Light, by the way, who I work with on Half and Half, who is, you know, amazing. These strong women getting a little bit more of their due at this point, as well as the men, by the way, taking in that, like, oh, okay, maybe just snorting cocaine off her ass and slapping 100 in between her cheeks. Is that the image I want white people to see of Black women? Because back in the 90s, it was just, first of all, people got paid insane money for videos. I'm not like now. The budgets were $1 million. There was just a lot of money in the 90s flowing around. Now you're like, if you can get a $20,000 budget for video, but then it was millions. So, you know, it was a different time. And again, I'm not trying to shit on that time. That was the time. And now we are here. And now we have, I think, a more aware person, whether it's a white person, Black person, or anyone, you know, like, that's just the truth. And honestly, I think we should have more solidarity with all ethnic groups, because when I think about, like, my Asian actor friends, think about how little you see an Asian person in a main role. Like, it's the same stuff we complain about as Black people. So I want us to have empathy for other cultures, or for our Latin brothers and sisters who, there's so much money in Spanish television, and yet they're only just starting to be front and center on American television. So I really, you know, I just try to have empathy for, and this also comes from growing up in New York City, where, you know, you're live on top of each other, man. You are forced to reckon with every ethnicity because you have a huge Asian immigrant population, and, you know, Puerto Rican, I miss the Puerto Ricans so much, a Puerto Rican population, and an East Indian population. They were just everybody. So you had to live on top. And in our public school, we also celebrated Chinese New Year and Hanukkah. And so you learned about other cultures. And because honestly, here's my theory. A lot of us sit in like, look what she's doing, or look at her edges. And that's just judgment, right?
All
it's
judgment.
Just judgment. Like, here's my deal, and I think women are going to hate me for this. I didn't understand why everyone was so up in arms about edges. I was like, what do you even, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I was like, oh, you mean the baby hairs? But then I put it together why it's such a big trend, because again, wigs became a big trend, right? So the baby hair is like your own. I didn't know, but if we're going to judge each other on superficial stuff like that, let's also look into some of the deeper things about what your friend has to offer, because I'm not going to discount her because she has messy edges. I'm just not, you know, I cannot do that to my fellow humans.
Another thing that I got when I announced that I was interviewing you, and I think more so a lot of the Black community, everybody was like, oh my God, it's Mary Jane. So people loved you in Half Baked. And that, I think that was a lot of people's introduction to you at that point, because Half Baked came before Half and Half, right?
Yeah, but I also I moved to LA because I booked a Chris Rock movie called CB4.
Yes, coming straight out of Low Cash. Crazy motherfucker. That's my movie.
You know what I like? I'm black, y'all.
Yeah. I love that movie.
Payne, Alexander Payne, so good in that part. But yeah, I moved here with CB4, and then I did a bunch of TV stuff, and then The Craft, and then Half Baked is totally stupid, but so funny. Like, I still get called Mary Jane on the street, and then like I was like, "Why are you calling?" Oh, I'm Mary Jane. I get it. No, I love doing that movie. I love that I got to work with Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle, two of our huge big comedians now. You know, in the early years of their career. I also like that ultimately because of the audience, not me, it's the audience that made those characters that I play kind of iconic. Like, I have 3 characters people know the names of: Rochelle from The Craft, Mary Jane, and Mona. You know, and then I have a lot of Sundance indies that people know too, but I'm saying, like, not every actor can say I got 3 characters people know the names of, right? So that actually makes me feel really happy, and that's why it is so great that people get to see how goofy Mona was. And Dee Dee, how fabulous Dee Dee was, and the mothers are so awesome together too. And then I am hoping, like I said, look, I started off this by saying with the book, I want to demystify something that I think a lot of people are sort of vaguely intrigued by but scared of because their grandma told them something and this and that. And I hope that people can look at my roles and look at my energy and see, like, do I seem like someone who's doing like dark stuff? I don't. I wouldn't. I don't have time. Like, it's not my energy.
It's too bubbly.
Yeah. As our weak. Well, it's not my saying. Someone else said this. We are only our weakest fellow man. Right? So if I can vibrate my energy high and try to be happy even when not everything is perfect, and that makes you, like, I wear this necklace a lot and people say, why do you wear it every day? Some people love it and some people are judge me for it. And I say, you know, I wear it a lot, not every day, but a lot. When I'm out and about, it makes people happy. It literally, their face light up when they see it. And that makes the energy better. Whatever's going to come out of their mouth next is going to be something nice or upbeat. And it's little things like that, you know, that just simple little things that can make the day go smoother. Because if you're someone who spends all day going, we all have aunties like this. Well, you know, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that, and start talking smack. And I'm not, listen, there's a place and a time for talking smack. You know what I'm saying? There is. But for the most part, I know when I am busy looking at someone else's life and critiquing it, it means something's wrong with me. I'm sad that I don't have something. I'm lonely or I'm whatever. So I just invite people to look at their judgment.
All right. So before we go, so we do a thing on here. We do top 5, and I generally try to get some top 5 that are relatable to like the conversations and everything that we've had. And then one where a top 5 where I do a little bit of research. So I'll start off first with the one I did a little bit of research on. Well, no, this one. I'm scared. This is a fun one because on your Twitter, talking with some of your fans.
Now I'm really scared.
No. This is a fun one, really. You do talk about a lot of cartoons and cartoon characters that you like love, that you miss, that you would love to see. Top 5 cartoon characters for you.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. It's a tough one, but it's cartoon, not like graphic novel, but like cartoon characters.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am a child of my particular generation. So the other day I was like thinking about Grape Ape for some reason. That's a really old cartoon. I remember Grape Ape. No one would have seen, but I think Scatman Crothers was one of the voices on it. He wasn't Grape Ape, but he was like Grape Ape's buddy. So it was like, I think I was fascinated by this black man's voice in the middle of a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Who else? Cartoons. Oh, I wish I'd prepared for this because I'm like totally blanking now. I really love all this obscure stuff that I can't even think of the names of. Like there was a Chinese cartoon they played every Christmas in New York City on Channel 5 that I loved. That was about a monkey king. That's one of my favorite cartoons. I also really liked I did love old Bugs Bunny, you know, not the Nazi Bugs Bunny. Not the Nazi version of Bugs Bunny.
Right.
Oh, because people who are listening, you probably know better than me, but a lot of these old cartoons were kind of used as propaganda for different things.
No, I remember.
But I had a soft spot for, you remember the witch in Bugs Bunny with the hairpins that came out whenever she moved around and clown. So
Bugs Bunny had a lot of. I said Bugs Bunny had a lot of really dope moments and shows. It's just that there's always that dark version of like,
I do think it's interesting when you go back and look at cartoons as an adult. Some are really childlike, right? But other ones you're like, oh my god, the layers they have in this. I'm also a Simpsons fan too. I really am, because it's so timely with its critiques on society. And then how about any and every cartoon Cree Summer's voice?
I'm
serious. She's so talented, and she's celebrated and lauded for her voiceover career. But I do believe if she was Anglo, she'd be even more known by everybody, to be 100% honest. You know,
he's on my short list of people that I would love to interview. I have the same affinity that I have for you. I have for Cree Summers. You guys are.
Well, I have a feeling, you know, if she has something to promote, that's the best time to ask, right? Like, because then people are willing to do something. But Cree and I, for people listening, did a chat, a Zoom chat for Book Soup, which is like my local bookstore here. Oh, you saw it. And I think it's like especially for women, though, don't you think there's kind of a cool chat between two grown women in communion, just two weirdos talking about life? So if there's anyone listening to this, I do recommend that podcast. I mean, that Zoom. It has video, because I was just, she's an amazing person who voices all these amazing things, and she's into a lot of the strange stuff I am. So it was really fun. Also, if people want signed copies of my book, Book Soup is the only place that has them. But now back to a cartoon. Oh my God, I'm spacing all my cartoons. That's the truth. I think I've won.
But you said 5.
I did? All right, yeah. No, I'm going to
say
say, if people don't know, people do know Cree, you know, they know her. They just might not. Some people may know her from different world, but some people don't put together her voice with those cartoons. And she's a phenomenal talent.
Phenomenal talent, yeah. Okay, so in your
Forbidden Planet. Is that a 1970s one? I
think so.
I think it's called Forbidden Planet or Strange Planet. It's a 70s cartoon. I have clips of it on my computer, and it's the weirdest 70s
It's Forbidden Planet.
It's a French film, I think, originally, but from the 70s. I love that. I highly recommend watching it, everyone. Maybe, take a little fun something before you do. Okay. Whatever fun is to you. That could be a glass of water.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're such a spiritual person, just inspirational works that inspired you. It could be movies, it could be books, but just 5 inspirational things that help inspire you.
Okay. Listen, I do think I ripped on it earlier, but I actually do think The Secret 07 is a great little mini introduction to Eastern philosophy, but you really have to understand it is an amuse-bouche. It is the nothing. It is like the tiny little portion that gets you started. And then if you're interested in that, you should go look at Buddhism. Right. You should go look at different things. But wait, what was the question? 5 books about just any book, spiritual books?
It could be books, it could be movies, just anything that
Oh, okay. I think if people are interested in Jungian tarot, meaning psychology-based tarot, like I am, Mary K. Greer has a website that is awesome. It's filled with much information about tarot and also about spreads. What else? Oh, because I kind of believe in time travel. This is not even related to your question, but I always is when I first saw Time Bandits as a kid, I loved that movie because I still think I can slide through time like they can. It's also funny and entertaining. Like, if you don't know Monty Python stuff, I think that's worth it. It's not going to enlighten you so much, but it will entertain you. And, and then I guess I have to, even though it's kind of a kid's show, I love Doctor Who. I'm such a nerd. Yeah. I really do though, because that's how I see life. I joke that I'm a Time Lord and I can flip and flop through time. So, nice. And I love that they at least had a black, person on it as the companion for a while. And now they have a woman doctor. And so, it's getting there. It's all getting there. What else? I'm trying to think. Oh, for those of you who are more hardcore than anything we've talked about, someone I know called Matt Orion, I'm mispronouncing his name, but he has a book called The Psychic Witch. So listen, I believe that everyone's a little psychic. If you want to develop it, he's got some good techniques in there. And I know some of you were like, no, the devil. But listen, when I was talking to people, right, I was talking to a guy the other day and I looked at his shoes and I went, oh, I bet you love those shoes, except I bet you wish they had more arch support. And he goes, how did you know I say that every day when I put them on? So I'm not talking about spooky, woo-woo, crazy psych. I'm just saying, that thought popped in my brain. Why? I don't give a shit about arch support. But I probably picked up on what was going on in his energetic field. So there's nothing creepy about that. So I like his book for that. Also, the Mother Peace Tarot Workbook is really great. I include one of their spreads in my book, but it's worth checking out for yourself. And then I love a book like Be Here Now by Ram Dass. Have you ever seen that book? It's a very hippy-dippy 60s, 70s book, but I love this book because I leave it in the loo, and then you pick it up, you just open any random page, and there's some kind of aphorism or thing there to ruminate or mull over. So it's Ram Dass, who passed away recently or this last year. Be Here Now. That's a great book. And like I said, it's very hippy dippy, but it's kind of cool.
Awesome. All right. So go ahead and how can my listeners and my viewers find you, and where can they get information?
I'm the most active, I'm gonna say, oddly enough, in my Instagram stories, probably because it is ephemeral and it goes away after 24 hours. But I do a lot of I make little mini movies for my Instagram story. So if you want to see just what I'm up to on a daily thing, I'm at True Rachel True, because this little white girl won't give me my name back, and I keep saying, aren't you sick of the brothers hitting you up? And she's like, crickets, crickets. And I'm like, fine, I'm True Rachel True on Instagram. And then on Twitter, I'm at Rachel True, just my name. Those are the two places. I do have an official Facebook, but mostly it's stuff I shoot from Instagram, to be totally honest. So I'm going to be honest and say Instagram's where I'm the most active, and my stories are where you can really see what's going on with me.
All right. Well, again, this has been One-on-One with Deuces. I have been Deuces. This has been the amazing, beautiful Rachel True, and we are out.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You like that video? Man, thank you for watching. We truly appreciate it. We got so many more videos on our page, so make sure you check them out over here. Hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you can always be notified anytime we release a new video. You already know how Geek Set get down. We got so much coming for y'all, man. Check it out. Stay in tune.
There was a time where hip-hop culture and geek culture were at odds.